Imagine you're on the world's biggest passenger plane. Everything feels safe, quiet, luxurious. And then suddenly, boom, your engine just exploded mid-flight, shaking the entire plane and leaving passengers terrified. This isn't some Hollywood disaster movie. This is the true, dark story of the Rolls-Royce Trent 900. The engine explosion that shocked the world and nearly brought down an Airbus A380. Buckle up because this flight is about to get intense. Back in the early 2000s, air travel was booming, and Airbus had a bold dream: build the biggest passenger plane the world had ever seen. Enter the Airbus A380, a double-decker giant that could carry over 500 passengers across the globe. The plane wasn't just big, it was massive, the whale of the skies. But a plane that huge needed engines that weren't just powerful, they needed to be absolute beasts. So Airbus turned to Rolls-Royce, a company famous for building not just luxury cars, but also jet engines you could trust to carry your family safely across the planet. Rolls-Royce stepped up with the Trent 900 engine, a high-tech marvel promising unmatched efficiency, smooth flights, and rock-solid reliability. On paper, this engine was basically Superman. It had giant fan blades, advanced materials, and cutting-edge tech, all built to handle the enormous power and stress of lifting an aircraft the size of a small cruise ship off the ground. By the time the A380 took its first commercial flight in 2007, airlines were falling over themselves to show off this incredible plane and its powerful Trent 900 engines. Passengers loved it. Luxury seating, quieter cabins, and a smoother ride made it feel like flying had finally stepped into the future. But here's the catch. Building something groundbreaking always comes with risks. While everyone was busy celebrating this aviation marvel, a hidden danger was quietly developing behind the scenes. The Trent 900 wasn't just advanced, it was complicated. Engineers had packed in so much new technology that minor issues could easily slip through unnoticed. Think of it like the latest smartphone, packed with amazing features, but sometimes the fancier it gets, the easier it breaks. Airlines trusted Rolls-Royce to handle everything behind the scenes, figuring the advanced technology meant safety was guaranteed. After all, when you're flying hundreds of passengers around the world every day, there's no room for shortcuts. Unfortunately, hidden beneath all that impressive engineering, tiny issues, small cracks, tiny oil leaks started appearing quietly, unnoticed, and underestimated. No one realized how critical these tiny flaws could become, and airlines kept proudly flying their giant double-deckers around the globe. Little did they know, the Trent 900 engine, the heart and muscle behind the largest commercial plane in history, was harboring a potentially deadly secret. A ticking time bomb quietly counting down, waiting for the exact moment to show the world how fragile even the strongest engines could be. And soon enough, the moment would come. An explosion in mid-air that would terrify passengers, shake an airline's reputation, and send shockwaves through the entire aviation industry. Mayday, mayday, this flight's just getting started. Hit subscribe now, because you won't believe what happens next. Here's the thing about airplanes. Tiny problems can create huge nightmares. Imagine you're cooking dinner and leave a little oil spill on the stove. No big deal, right? Now imagine that same tiny oil leak but inside an enormous jet engine spinning thousands of times per minute. Yeah, suddenly it's a huge deal. Behind the glossy brochures and flashy airline ads, the Trent 900 was quietly developing these exact kinds of tiny, unnoticed problems. Rolls-Royce had designed this engine to handle huge amounts of heat, pressure, and speed. But underneath all that impressive tech, little flaws were beginning to emerge. Microscopic cracks started forming inside the engine's oil pipes, thin tubes responsible for keeping the engine running smoothly and safely. To make things simple, jet engines, especially huge ones like the Trent 900, rely heavily on oil to cool down their powerful moving parts. Without enough oil, friction quickly builds up. Think of it as driving your car at highway speeds without engine oil. Things heat up fast and bad stuff starts to happen. And here's where the danger was hiding. These microscopic cracks, smaller than the tip of a needle, were letting tiny drop of oil leak into areas of the engine where they weren't supposed to be. Tiny leaks might not seem like a disaster waiting to happen, but remember, These engines were spinning at speeds faster than most of us can imagine, creating incredible heat and pressure. Airlines and engineers first dismissed these leaks as minor annoyances, nothing to lose sleep over. In aviation, there's often this attitude of, if it ain't broke yet, why fix it? Airlines thought that as long as these leaks stayed small, everything would be fine. It's a bit like seeing a small crack on your windshield and ignoring it, hoping it'll just magically go away. But these tiny oil leaks weren't disappearing. Instead, they were quietly growing, getting worse with every flight. The real problem: airlines didn't fully realize how dangerous these leaks could become. Rolls-Royce's engines were so advanced, so trusted, that most airlines believed nothing serious could ever go wrong. After all, Rolls-Royce had built their entire reputation on reliability, safety, and performance. But as those microscopic cracks widened, danger grew, and the countdown to disaster had already begun. Soon, the hidden danger of these unnoticed leaks and cracks wouldn't stay hidden much longer. An explosive reminder that even tiny problems left unchecked could cause catastrophic consequences mid-flight. November 4, 2010 started out as a picture-perfect day. Qantas Flight 32, a massive Airbus A380 prepared to take off from Singapore's Changi Airport bound for Sydney. Passengers settled in, some flipping through movies, others catching up on sleep. Nobody knew they were moments away from experiencing the kind of terror usually reserved for Hollywood thrillers. Just minutes after takeoff, as the plane soared smoothly upward through the clear blue skies, passengers heard a thunderous explosion. It wasn't turbulence, and it definitely wasn't normal. Outside, the engine on the plane's left wing had literally blown apart mid-air, shooting metal debris in every direction. Inside the cabin, confusion turned into panic. Passengers watched in horror as thick smoke began trailing from the wing. Meanwhile, inside the cockpit, alarms screamed louder than a fire station during an emergency call. Imagine being a pilot, calmly sipping your coffee on one second and the next. You're faced with screens flashing reds, warnings everywhere, and a plane that's suddenly fighting against you. Captain Richard de Crespigny and his crew immediately sprang into action. They faced an unprecedented crisis. Engine 2 had completely exploded, causing catastrophic damage. Metal fragments tore through vital electrical and hydraulic systems, leaving the crew struggling to control the gigantic aircraft. It wasn't just an engine failure. This was a massive mid-air emergency. As passengers gripped their seats, oxygen masks deployed, and flight attendants scrambled to reassure everyone, the pilots were frantically assessing the damage. The plane systems were failing one by one, warning blinking across their screens like a bad arcade game. For several agonizing minutes, the crew wrestled with a seemingly endless cascade of failures, desperately trying to stabilize the crippled giant. Remarkably, despite overwhelming odds, Captain de Crespigny kept his cool, methodically going through checklists and working with his crew to regain control. After a nerve-wracking ordeal, the pilot turned back towards Singapore, attempting an emergency landing that no simulator could have fully prepared them for. Passengers braced themselves as the giant A380, damaged and bleeding fuel, approached the runway. Emergency vehicles lined the runway, ready for the worst-case scenario. Hearts pounded as the landing gear touched down. And against all odds, Flight 32 landed safely, skidding to a halt on the runway. Everyone on board survived, but aviation had just faced one of its darkest moments. How could an engine, trusted by airlines and passengers alike, explode so catastrophically mid-air? Investigators were about to uncover shocking answers hidden deep within the Trent 900, and those answers would shake the aviation industry to its core. As soon as Qantas Flight 32 touched down, the world's aviation experts jumped into action, eager to understand what went wrong. This wasn't just another engine malfunction. It was an explosion that could have been catastrophic. Investigators began picking through the twisted metal, looking for clues like detectives at a crime scene. Right away, they zeroed in on the shattered Trent 900 engine. Rolls-Royce, Airbus, and safety officials all joined forces, examining every scrap of evidence. And it didn't take long for the investigation to uncover something deeply unsettling. Remember those tiny oil leaks and microscopic cracks we mentioned earlier? Turns out they weren't so minor after all. Investigators found that a small oil pipe deep inside the engine had cracked, leaking oil into places it didn't belong. Under extreme pressure and heat, this oil ignited and triggered an explosive chain reaction. It wasn't just a minor engine fire. This was like tossing gasoline on a barbecue. But here's the real kicker. Investigators discovered that this wasn't a random freak event. The cracked oil pipe had been incorrectly manufactured with a tiny mistake made during drilling. Rolls-Royce had no idea this hidden defect existed, and their regular checks never caught it. It's like buying an expensive new car and later finding out that there was a hidden manufacturing error that could cause your brakes to fail without warning. The deeper investigators looked, the clearer the uncomfortable truth became. Other Trent 900 engines had similar tiny defects lurking unnoticed. Suddenly, it wasn't just about one flight. It was about the entire fleet of Airbus A380s powered by these engines. Airlines across the globe faced an alarming reality. They had been flying with engines potentially harboring the same ticking time bombs. This incident exposed how much trust airlines had placed in Rolls-Royce's reputation and how that trust nearly ended in tragedy. Sure, the engine was state-of-the-art, powerful and efficient, but even the best tech in the world can be brought down by small, overlooked mistakes. The shocking truth from the investigation left the aviation industry reeling. If a tiny oil pipe could trigger such a devastating explosion, what else might be hiding unseen in other planes? Airlines and regulators knew they had to act fast. The world had just gotten an alarming wake-up call, and ignoring it wasn't an option. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Flight 32 wasn't the first warning sign. In fact, there were earlier clues and quiet whispers in the industry about potential issues with the Trent 900 engines. But these signs were brushed off as minor annoyances, something to worry about later. The aviation world was so impressed with the shiny new technology and Rolls-Royce's stellar reputation that they didn't pay enough attention to the small red flags waving right in front of their faces. Even before the explosion over Singapore, Rolls-Royce had started noticing tiny oil leaks during routine inspections on other Trent 900 engines. Airlines, too, had reported minor issues. But since nothing catastrophic had happened yet, everyone just shrugged and moved on. It's like ignoring a weird noise from your car because it's still driving fine, until the wheels literally come off. Regulators, busy managing the rapid growth of global aviation, didn't push hard enough for tougher inspections. Airlines, eager to avoid grounding expensive planes, didn't insist on immediate checks. The whole industry had fallen into a dangerous cycle of complacency, relying heavily on Rolls-Royce's assurances that everything was fine. Here's where things got even more frustrating. Other airlines had experienced smaller oil-related issues with the Trent 900 engines and quietly repaired them without raising loud alarm bells. These incidents should have been clear signals that something serious was brewing beneath the surface. Instead, each small repair became just another unnoticed footnote, quietly buried under paperwork and flight schedules. It's human nature to hope for the best, especially when the alternative involves expensive downtime, costly repairs, and a damaged reputation. But aviation safety isn't built on hope. It's built on action. Unfortunately, the Trent's 900 small leaks and minor cracks didn't trigger enough immediate action until Qantas Flight 32 nearly ended in tragedy. After the explosion, the industry's mindset shifted dramatically. Airlines finally understood that ignoring small warning could result in devastating consequences. Regulators cracked down, ordering emergency inspections of every Trent 900 engines worldwide. Rolls-Royce scrambled to redesign faulty components, finally acknowledging the problem they'd underestimated for so long. But the question lingered. Why did it take a near disaster for everyone to wake up? Ignoring warnings and hoping for the best isn't a safety strategy. It's gambling with passengers' lives. The industry had been playing a dangerous game, and Flight 32 showed just how quickly that game could end in catastrophe. After Flight 32, the aviation world went into full emergency mode. Airlines couldn't pretend things were okay anymore, and Rolls-Royce knew their reputation was hanging by a thread. It was crystal clear that dramatic changes had to happen immediately, and luckily, the industry finally stepped up. First off, every single Airbus A380 using the Trent 900 engine worldwide got urgently grounded for intense inspections. This wasn't a quick once-over. It was a deep, microscopic look inside of the engine's oil pipes. Imagine it like getting an emergency X-ray when doctors suspect you've broken a bone. Rolls-Royce and airline mechanics were desperate to make sure no other hidden cracks or leaks could trigger another catastrophic mid-air explosion. And guess what? They found exactly what they feared: multiple engines with similar issues. Suddenly, airlines had to deal with dozens of engines requiring immediate repairs and replacements. This cost millions and took months of grueling, round-the-clock work, but for once, everyone agreed the cost and downtime were worth it. Rolls-Royce didn't stop at fixing existing engines. They completely redesigned critical parts to prevent oil leaks and cracks from ever happening again. New, stronger pipes were installed, along with more precise manufacturing methods to eliminate tiny flaws. The Trent 900 got a complete safety makeover. Think of it as replacing a flimsy lock on your front door with a steel-reinforced security system. But the improvements didn't end there. Airlines and regulators updated safety procedures, making tougher inspections mandatory. No more shortcuts. Advanced ultrasound and X-ray inspections, once considered too costly, became standard. Pilots and maintenance crews also received extra training to quickly spot any early warning signs. The industry learned a painful but important lesson: trust isn't enough. Verification is critical. Airlines couldn't rely blindly on manufacturers' promises anymore. Regulators realized complacency was the true enemy. New global safety standards were introduced, forcing everyone to double down on prevention, not just reaction. This massive response made aviation dramatically safer, ensuring passengers wouldn't have to relive the nightmare aboard Qantas Flight 32. But as the industry breathed a sigh of relief, one uneasy question lingered. Had the aviation world really learned its lesson for good, or could complacency slowly creep back in? Because here's the scary truth. History has a funny way of repeating itself, especially when lessons are forgotten too quickly. The changes were impressive, but the question remained: would they truly last? After all the inspections, improvements, and major safety shakeups, you'd assume something like Qantas Flight 32 could never happen again, right? Well, aviation safety isn't that simple. Here's the uncomfortable reality. Even the toughest regulations and the strictest checks can't eliminate every risk. The sky will always hold surprises, especially when we least expect them. Today, the Trent 900 engines are safer than ever, thanks to significant redesigns and stricter inspections. Airlines and regulators genuinely learned from the terrifying explosion of Flight 32. But here's where things get tricky. Safety isn't something you fix once and then walk away. It's constant, ongoing challenge. Airlines need to stay alert and keep inspecting engines regularly, even if it seems overly cautious or expensive. Because here's the thing, complacency is aviation's worst enemy. When planes fly smoothly and safely day after day, it's easy to believe nothing could ever go wrong again. Maintenance routines might start feeling less urgent, inspections might get skipped, and slowly but surely, safety margins shrink. It's like knowing you should replace your car tires but putting it off because they haven't blown yet. Until one day, pop. The real test for aviation isn't how it responds to one disaster. It's how the industry avoids becoming too comfortable afterward. Could another Trent 900 explode in mid-air today? Probably not. Rolls-Royce has vastly improved its engine designs, and airlines now perform far stricter inspections. But could a different, unforeseen issue quietly emerge somewhere else, unnoticed and ignored, until it becomes another headline-making crisis? That's the real danger. Aviation history proved this again and again. Disasters almost always come from small issues overlooked or underestimated. The only real solution: constant vigilance, strict standards, and never taking safety for granted, no matter how smooth things seem to be. The Trent 900 engine explosion aboard Qantas Flight 32 shook the aviation world to its core. It exposed how even the most advanced technology could hide dangerous flaws and how trusting a perfectly safe record too much could lead to disaster. Today, flying is safer thanks to hard-learned lessons, tougher checks, and improved designs. But maintaining the safety requires constant effort. No shortcuts allowed. Because when you're thousands of feet above the ground, there's no room for error. And no one can afford to wait for another wake-up call. The skies may look calm, but behind every flight is a story like this one. Silent, buried, almost forgotten. Stick around, because the next disaster that almost happened You've probably flown right past it.